Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I now call to order this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. It's November 14th, 2023. This meeting is noticed from 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Assemblymember Brawley is absent at the moment. Assemblymember Bronga,
Here.
Assembly Chair
This is
Constant.
Anna. I'm on the phone.
Here,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Member
Assemblymember
Constance here.
Brawley
Member
is
Brawley is
on the
here.
phone. Member Bronga is here. Assembly Chair Constant.
Here.
Assemblymember Cross.
Here.
Assemblymember Johnson.
Here.
Assemblymember Martinez.
Present.
Assemblymember Myers.
Here.
Assemblymember Perez Verdilla.
Here.
Assemblymember Rivera.
Present.
Assemblymember Solt is not here. Assemblymember Volland is not here, and Assemblymember Zalatel is my
She's
understanding she's
excused.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Johnson.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, Mr. Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the Indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present Indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Next, we have one item of business, item 4A on the agenda, Resolution AR 2023-391, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly expanding the 1111 East 56th Avenue shelter capacity to 200. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second. Moved by Mr. Rivera, seconded by Mr. Cross. Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on the current utilization of emergency cold weather shelter, it's apparent to me that we have met the criteria, which is a 90% utilization rate, in order to justify expansion of our emergency cold weather shelter. So I think these 50 beds, I think, will be very welcome, and hopefully will be able to be turned on quickly. Question to Ms. Johnson, can you talk a little bit about how quickly these beds will be turned on, and then a little bit about how you're going to fill those beds, the criteria and methodology to fill the beds?
Yes, through the chair to Mr. Rivera. We met with the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness this morning and did anticipate that this would be approved today. And pending that approval, we have worked with them we have communicated the list that is still remaining for people who are seeking shelter. The coalition is working to devise who is still on CE for highest vulnerability, and then they are planning to place into those 50 beds at SWS.
Just note that Mr. Volland has arrived. Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that, and I appreciate the focus on our highest vulnerable populations. I think that would be very much appreciated for those folks to be able to get a shelter bed. Can you speak to any issues with regard to bathrooms or showers? Because I know that is a limitation to the space. And then after that, I have a final comment.
Yes, through the chair, we did meet with the operator Henning and asked how showering and bathrooms were going. Based on Henning feedback, this has not been an issue thus far. They have been scheduling shower times, and it has been working. We did ask them if they foresaw any problems with adding 50 additional people. They did not have any issues or believe it would not create a problem at this time.
Great, thank you. So final comment. definitely encourage approval of this resolution for us to increase the capacity SWS to 200. I think in addition to that, and we'll talk about this a little bit at the Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting tomorrow. It's not really on the agenda for today's meeting. But in addition to that, I would highly encourage the administration to move as quickly as possible with standing up any possible warming facilities. I know the administration has considered one for downtown. I would also encourage them to consider one for Midtown. And then if there's any other possible shelter plans that the administration may have, to please move forward with those as quickly as possible. That is my encouragement to the administration, and hopefully we'll hear more about all of that tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I have 3 people in the queue, Ms. Brawley, Mr. Martinez, and Ms. Broncos. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My question is really about, I guess, operations more generally, but thinking about the increase in operations as well. We've heard that all of the beds are full, but then also, of course, they rotate. People may be asked to leave or don't come back. So I just wondered, what is the general plan for, let's say a bed is open by an early evening, 7 p.m. Is there any opportunity to let somebody else back in, or maybe you can just speak to how that's being addressed, so we're making sure we're maximizing our bed use?
So there's some clip on your phone, Ms. Brawley, and I think the gist of what you suggested might have been missed, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, so if I understood Ms. Brawley, essentially what you're asking for is when beds become available at SWS because someone is no longer using their bed, how folks can either access their bed again, or sort of what are the mechanics around that?
Through the chair to Ms. Brawley, this is a question that we receive a lot. So when people enter into the shelter, let's say they come in at noon, we give them a bed. They are assigned a bed. They have a check-in, and that check-in is somewhere right around dinner time. And what happens is people will check in at that time. They will be allocated that bed for the night, and then they will leave and not use that bed for the night. And then we have a curfew at 10 p.m. So people cannot enter the shelter after 10 p.m. because it is a congregate setting. We don't want a lot of people coming and going throughout the night. And so the next morning, when they miss their check-in or they don't overnight, they lose that bed. And so we have a vacancy of that bed by the morning, and then we allow for check-ins for the following day. So when we say that we're full, it's usually around dinner time when we say every shelter bed has been allocated to a client. Whether that bed is slept in or not is a different discussion. And by the next morning, that bed has become available. And so 10 p.m. is usually the last, when our final check-in is for the night. And if someone has failed to take that bed for the night, it's flipped the next morning. Their area is clean and their items are stored if it's left behind.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a number of people still in the queue. Mr. Martinez?
Thank you. First question, who is requesting this extension?
And the IT problem might be on our end with the phone because you had the same clip. Ms. Johnson?
Through the chair to Mr. Martinez, the Anchorage Health Department is requesting an increased capacity because we believe the need is there.
Thank you. You said Henning is okay with this?
Through the chair, we have communicated with Henning and did ask if we increase capacity by 50 people, if they foresaw any problems or operational issues. They said that they would be happy to accommodate the increase of 50 clients.
Are we seeking any emergency expansion with other shelters?
Through the chair to Mr. Martinez, we are not currently seeking any additional capacity at current emergency cold weather shelters or any of the privately run shelters. There is discussions of turning on a warming facility.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Bronca?
I was wondering if with this additional 50, if there'd been any discussion about moving some into the main building. Still kind of burns me that there's a very large, nice area that has space. And I'm hoping that we could utilize some of that area for people to be housed instead of just the garage bays.
Through the chair to Ms. Branca, right now we have all 200 cots set up in the facility just to make sure that we could allow for that type of space. Only 150 have been filled thus far, but there is really no desire, one, because of staffing issues, and then two, how do you decide who gets to go into a more private area versus the current congregate location? So having an equitable approach. Right now, that facility is used for like day engagement, navigation services, et cetera.
So I'm sorry if I missed this somewhere along the way. Is this only single people? There's no families at this shelter right now?
Through the chair to Ms. Branca, this is for single adults. There are no children under the age of 18 at this facility.
Next in the queue, Mr. Johnson, Vaughn, and Rivera. So Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. So, the plan was put forward for 150 persons, and I think that was a good plan. Now, I understand that we have extraordinary need right now, so I'm highly supportive of this resolution. But my question would be, and we can treat it as a rhetorical question for now, or you can answer it if you like. My hope is that our long-term, through the winter plan, if you will, would be to actually operate this as a 150-bed shelter. Is it our expectation that this is a temporary condition and we'll have increased capacity going forward to where we can hopefully scale back to 150, or is this just going to be the new normal for this site?
Through the chair to Mr. Johnson, I think this is a really great question. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would like to maintain the 200% capacity, especially for emergency situations such as we've had lately with snowfall and frigid temperatures. It's always our goal to get people moved out of shelter and onto, the next step in their journey. We could obviously decompress this facility if a new shelter came online, or if we saw that the need was not needed anymore throughout the winter, we could scale back if like a new facility came online, I would say.
So if a new facility comes online, are we anticipating any additional capacity? I understand that we have one proposal for a warming shelter for up to 50 persons. Is there anything else in discussion or in the works?
Through the chair to Mr. Johnson, we have had a facility approach us for just the facility only. One of the problems with this is that when we put forward the SWS facility for an ITB, we only had one respondent. I do have a lot of faith in Henning, but I would say that adding a fourth shelter to that workload is a lot, not just for them, but for the system completely. And so if we were going to bring on an additional facility, we would like to put out a new ITB and see if there was any additional respondents. Because turning on a new shelter, especially a 150-person shelter, in the time that we need it is a heavy lift for anyone.
All right, so next, Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as Member Johnson. There is a huge need right now. I don't want folks dying because of cold temperature, cold exposure, but I'm just not overly optimistic about increasing capacity beyond, at one specific location. And I wish I shared your faith. You said you had a lot of faith in the current operator. I just think what we've learned from experience is that Anchorage doesn't have a lot of operators that have expertise in large shelter management, is what I will say. And so I guess what I don't want to happen is that, number one, I'm glad that we are not going to be co-locating a warming area, because I think we saw how that was problematic with the Sullivan. And I just don't want to see this capacity increasing at one location, because I think it creates problems. And so those are like the two things that I'm trying to really weigh in the balance right now. I am going to support this increased capacity. But I have questions around so are like CE assessments being done regularly? Can the assembly get like a biweekly report of outflow to housing from shelter, and in order to help us calibrate capacity needs on an ongoing basis? And then also questions around prioritization of emergency winter shelter, because I think there's still some confusion. You had to let us know, Ms. Johnson, about there were folks that are housed, either they're living with family members, or I shouldn't say housed, I should say sheltered, or they are on leases at the Golden Lion or the guest house, but they were interested in the non-congregate settings. And so is there a path for prioritization of folks who are currently unsheltered when it comes to both the non-congregate and congregate emergency winter shelter settings?
Through the chair to Mr. Vaughn, there was quite a few questions in there, so I'll try and work through that. I will tell you that it is not feasible, at least from our belief, to add more than 200 beds into this shelter. We do have an option for bunk beds in the facility, so there's no more floor space to go wide, but there is an opportunity to go up. We do not want to do that just for personal space, hygienic purposes, and obviously overall mitigation of community impacts. Secondly, we did meet with the coalition this morning. We have passed on the wait list, who is still remaining on the wait list, and they are working to do a CE prioritization for those 50 individuals. They plan to get us a list to say, these are the people that we believe are most vulnerable. They need to go inside. And then we'll work with our outreach workers, Henning outreach workers, and the coalition's outreach workers to really heavily get people into the facility that we believe need it most. So yes, CE assessments are being done. We're working well with the coalition to get prioritization. We do not want to go above 200 people in this facility, nor do I think the facility would support that. And then lastly, what was your last question?
Biweekly report of outflow.
Yeah, so we have third-party oversight that was awarded to Restorative Reentry Services, who was the third-party contractor last year for the Sullivan. I believe that contract is being executed as we speak, and we should start having weekly meetings, and then we'll have biweekly reports to the assembly. And one of the data points is outflow, how many people are exiting shelter.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just first thing, I just want to caution folks from using the term warming shelter. It's my opinion that these warming areas aren't going to be turned into shelter, so folks won't be sleeping in them overnight, as I understand the operations of them. So we really shouldn't, just to not confuse folks and make them think that there are some additional shelters that they can sleep in overnight opening up. That it will not be the case, as I understand it. These are warming areas, I think is the correct terminology for folks to use. And then by and large, I think utilization is going to drive the path forward. Once we get these additional 50 beds online, the utilization of those beds, how frequently they reach I think 90% utilization rate is the standard that we are using, will drive whether we need to scale back or scale more. And hard for me to say what that's going to look like right now. But certainly I think having the additional 50 beds will be welcome in the community. We're going to have a lot more discussions on all of this stuff tomorrow, but if you can give us a sense, Alexis, Ms. Johnson, on the budget, what are the budget ramifications for this? And does this all fit within the emergency cold weather shelter appropriations the Assembly has made thus far?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera. For 2023 remainder, if we approve this today and we get 50 people placed within the facility, our cost at SWS will go from $72 a person down to $68 for operations only. And so that cost is $153,000 to get us through the remainder of this year. That does not include food. Food is $14.27. So for 50 people at 45 days is an additional $32,170 $1,000,000.50. So you're looking at about $190K to get us through the remainder of this year. And then for 2024, if we remain at the heightened capacity of $268 a person, we'd need an additional $408,000 to get us through the end of April just for operations. And then for food, we would need an additional $85,620 to get us through the end of the shelter season.
Thank you. Question on the contracts. Are you going to need to amend any of the contracts, or will this, at least through the end of December, or will the current contracts have the bandwidth for this additional cost?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I don't believe I have the answer to that question. I would have to ask our grants and contracts team. I don't believe the contract needs to be amended, but I do believe that an appropriation would be necessary.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Johnson, I think you have a typo on page 2.
Just right in the header. In the header.
Yeah.
And that was my only comment. If
All right,
wanted to
thank
get
you,
that
Mr. Myers.
corrected.
So I don't think we need a motion to amend that, do we? That's Scrivener's error. And so it's noted on the record. It should say 1111 East 56, not Sullivan Arena. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Myers. Ms. Branga.
So I had a question, and it's a little bit off of this, but I've been getting a lot of messages about confusion with wait list and people who believe they're on it that have never been contacted. And is the wait list through the health department, that phone number that's on the little shelter tab? And then is the holdup if someone's on that list and haven't been contacted because there's people that you're still trying to reach that are in between them? That's the first part of my question.
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Branga. That phone number is still active. It is a Henning associated phone number, and it actually now rings to the SWS facility. We worked our way through a lot of the people who were on the wait list either could not be contacted or didn't want to go to the congregate facility, mostly because they wanted a non-congregate location, or they had a partner or a relationship that they wanted to continue, whereas at SWS, we don't allow cohabitation. And so that was one of the biggest indicators of why people who were called didn't want to go to that shelter. Some people could not be reached, but we do still have that phone line remaining. And we are actively trying to pursue everyone who's on the list. Now that we have this additional 50, we've turn that list over to the coalition for them to help prioritize who needs it most. So the wait list, although it's still active, is not being utilized for these 50 beds.
And the next part, if the safety center picks someone up, can they bring them to the solid waste services shelter? I was thinking about our recent deaths on the street, and if someone had they didn't think they had a bed in the shelter, could someone just take someone to the shelter and get them in?
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Branga, that's a great question. Right now, ASP is transporting people who brack out to SWS if requested. They are providing transport.
Very last part. It would be really nice when the report, you do the biweekly report, if we could find out what kind of programs, there was the large open areas, and you were talking about some group activities, and wondering if any of that's going on and what is possibly being offered. And then what navigators are on site, who is going there to meet with people. I'd really be interested. And then how the transportation is working, because it's a fairly remote site. Are people able to get where they need to go? And then I believe you were going to allow pets on site, and I wondered if you had any, or if that was going all right.
Through the chair to Ms. Branga. Tomorrow at the H&H meeting, Henning will be here to answer any questions regarding navigators or social service providers. I do know that they have had group activities on site. They do have some providers that are coming in to do case management, but they can go into more detail about that tomorrow. We do have pets on site. It's going fairly well. They have their own space. so far so good as far as clients taking care of their pets. We had some issues last year with the Sullivan for people placing their pets in shelter and then abandoning them. And so we have a great working relationship with animal control on that process. We have not had any issues thus far. And then what was your transportation? So through the chair to Ms. Bronga, we offer bus passes. The coalition and Anchorage Health Department do offer bus passes to get people there. The Anchorage Health Department is also providing transportation through our outreach team. I know the coalition is as well. ASP is providing transportation from the safety center. We have had some transportation from Anchorage Police Department and the crisis teams. So there is transportation happening within the city, and the bus route is less than 1,000 feet from the facility as well.
Right, so we're running just to the edge of our time. No, it's okay. Are there other questions? Are members ready to vote? Hearing and seeing no further questions, members may proceed to vote.
Assemblymember Perez Verdilla,
Yes.
Assemblymember Brawley,
Yes.
Assemblymember Volland,
Yes.
Assemblymember Cross,
Yes.
Assembly Chair Constant,
Yes,
Assemblymember Johnson,
Yes.
Assemblymember Bronga,
Yes.
Assemblymember Rivera,
Yes.
Assemblymember Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblymember Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the vote passes 10-0.
all right, thank you. So on a vote of 10-0, AR 2023-391 has passed the assembly. So next on the agenda, we'll have time for one member of the audience to participate. Oh, actually, we're going to have to truncate your time to 2 minutes today because Mr. Johnson needs to make an announcement. So, but we'll give you 2 minutes on the clock.
Can I bank the other minute for tomorrow? You think you know better than I use.
Oh, plus down here.
I offered to buy a clock.
Go ahead and start, Ron.
Are you ready?
Right here, Jamie.
Okay, Ron Oliva, I'll speak a little faster than an auctioneer, but I have concerns about this cold weather addition of 50. When I brought it to your attention, I hope you all got my email. I'll be here tomorrow on other issues, but the idea of having the Brother Francis shelter capacity at 240 and they're basically at 120. You moved almost 300 people downtown, and if the Brother Francis shelter can hold another 20, right across the alley is the navigation center where these people receive help. And the articles in the last 2 Sundays papers, whether it be Dave Rittenberg attesting to the need of the services in coordinating with Henning, why would you put homeless people further away from the services in a facility that has the proper personnel to handle them? So I find it, well, uneconomical and then just outrageously against the idea of getting them close to a navigation center to focus them into permanent housing. So it doesn't make sense. So I know you can't answer those questions, but that space is available. And to add another 50 to the transfer center, which I don't know what shell game you used for a regulated utility, solid waste doesn't have to provide homeless housing. That's a ratepayer for who pays their garbage pickup bills. And that was creative. However you did that, you can't continue to do that. That's against RCA regulations. So my time's up, but I hope I stimulated some questions, thought, and for the benefit
Thank you,
of the
Mr.
whole,
Leva.
it's
I would
use
just
the Brother
note,
Francis shelter.
Mr. Leva, thank you. I would note that solid waste service is not a regulated utility. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, just real quick, wanted to mention to members in the administration that we are planning a special enterprise and utility oversight committee meeting. It'll be on December 6th at 12:40 p.m. And specifically looking to debrief and discuss our response to the recent snow events.
All right, thank you. So December the 6th, after the Budget and Finance Committee, we're going to have a special committee meeting, which will be in lieu of the committee meeting that's scheduled for December 21st, because that week we're going to not schedule meetings. So thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Bill, you got some money for me? I'll work you tonight.